YouTube. Hi, my name is Mark, and this is Nixon Motorsports. This channel is all about motorsports, from racing to exotic cars and even simulators. Today's video, we will be installing a Krontec steering wheel hub on the race car. I thought you might find this of interest. So with that, let's get into the video. Come on. So steering wheel hubs, why are they of interest? Why are they needed? Well, first of all, let me go down here and show you just a conventional steering wheel hub, right? This is one from Spa, and you can see it has a spline here. This is what goes on to the spline on the shaft. This end of the hub mounts on your steering wheel. In fact, if I roll over here, this is the steering wheel that I just took off of my car. And if I roll this over, you can see it has what I call a hub as well. Now this is a Spa mount, and that actually is a Spa mount for a wireless adapter. And I call it that because basically these wires go through the steering shaft and then ultimately to your steering wheel and then to your data or your I/O, right? The problem with the Spa hub, and I've used this now a few times on different race cars, is basically my pins became misaligned in the shaft, and because of that, applying the wheel to the shaft bent the pins, and it became unusable at that point. In fact, I was not able to race this last May, one race on a Sunday. I had to DNF because climbing in the car, installing the steering wheel, sure enough, these pins bent. So first time that's ever happened for me. Let me pan down here though. I'm not sure if you can see this. This is the end of the Spa unit. See these small pins? They go into the steering wheel itself, okay? Now, if I look at, rotate this around, bear with me. If I look at this end, here's the receiving side of the Spa mount. Now, this actually slides into the shaft, and there's a small keyway, if you can see that there, a small keyway on the shaft that keeps it aligned in the shaft itself so it doesn't twist, turn, and so on. And then there's a brass nut that actually screws into the shaft. So anyway, first time I had a failure with the Spa shaft. So I am upgrading. I'm actually now going to be using this Krontec steering wheel hub and so on. And it looks quite intense. Everything that I've read about this is it's a pretty impressive device. So let me pan down here and just see if you can take a glance at this thing. So this is the end that bolts up to the back side of your steering wheel, and then this is the receiving end that pushes onto the shaft in the car, right? So you can see here there's mil-spec connectors here, and there's quite a few. I forgot the number actually, but it's more than a dozen. And here's a unique thing that's actually quite different. If I can hold this and push it down at the same time. So unlike the Spa device with that coupler that I showed you a moment ago, this one has this receiving end here. And if you notice, look at this shaft and the end of this thing. It only goes on one way, right? And see these locking pins? When you push down, if I can, see how they disappear? Or they disappear. That allows you to slide your hub onto your shaft, and if you look in the bottom, if you can see that here, inside the shaft there's mil-spec connectors as well on both ends here, right? So that's the main difference. You can see here this indent on both sides. That's where those locking pins keep the steering wheel from being removed from the car. And anyway, this is supposed to be quite intense. So like anything, you have to fit parts to your car, right? So in this steering design, what I've done for the shaft is let me pan down here. So I made this shaft itself, and you can see it, well, maybe you can, it's actually hollow, and it allows you to feed wires in on this side and then pull them out on this side, and there's bearings when this mounts inside the car, of course, right? So what I did, or what I'm doing, let me slide this in here. So I made an adapter on the end here to slide in the Krontec hub for the shaft, since my shaft dimensions were different. So that's all I did, was made this piece. I'll weld this on the shaft, and then I'll use a bolt through this end once I have alignment for top dead center in the steering wheel. But that's what I'll be using. And then just to show you how the entire piece works, again, once this slides in the race car, there's bearings in the strut that holds the shaft in place. Once you slide it through, then you bolt up this this helm joint, and you could weld, but I don't, because I have wires through here. So this is just bolted on both ends down to the receiving shaft, to the steering rack itself. So that's what it looks like, or will look like, once I have it in the race car. So does that make sense? So what I'll need to do, let me pan over here, is obviously pull the steering wheel off, get the I/O off the wheel itself. I'll have to take this SPA adapter off and bring that over on the bench and fit the new adapter, create a wiring loom through the new shaft, and be able to get that in the car. Okay, so let me pull the wheel off, get it on the bench, and then I'll bring you back at that point. So I'm going to do a few items here. I'm getting ready to see how this mating connector works. Let me go down here on this steering shaft for this Krontec hub. You know, as I showed you, I had to make a small little adapter here because my shaft size diameter, the OD, is very important for my bearing fitting in the race car, and obviously that shaft size is different than this shaft size, so I had to make a little coupler. That's all I did here. I'm going to go ahead and weld this piece onto the shaft, and by doing so, that will allow me to mate this connector, of course. I'm going to do that first, and then I'm going to take a couple of these mil-spec connectors, and I'm just going to play with the I/O, and there's 22 connectors in here, by the way. I'm not going to use that many, but I'm going to play with just how that fits before I continue past that point. So with that, let's go ahead and weld this shaft and continue from there. All right, let me turn down and show you what I've done. So I've welded this adapter here, drilled my mounting hole, and went ahead, and you can see one wire that's actually pushed through there, and I'm not sure if you can see the pin inside here. I doubt it, but that's a mil-spec connector. If you look at these here, they're very fine pitch. There's the female, and here's, if I get the wire out of the way, here's some of the male connectors. So I've done that, and I put one connector here on the reverse side of the hub itself. So here's the male connector, and here's the female side. Now for these mil-spec connectors, you do need to have the right tools. So this is what I use as a crimping device. This is for the fine pitch mil-spec, and I use this larger tool for you know, the larger connectors that I use throughout the race car. So just kind of share on that. So at this point, what I will do is add the rest of the wiring to the shaft, to each ends of the adapter, and clean all that up and be able to, you know, test all the I/O, make sure that you know, the continuity between each connection is solid, and at that point be able to move then to the steering wheel and get the new hub mounted in the steering wheel. All right, so let me turn down to the wiring on the hubs like I told you. So I went ahead and I only need 12 connectors, so I went ahead and added 12 connectors to this, so I have plenty to spare, which is neat. So again, this side will go to the bottom of the steering wheel itself, right? It'll mate up this way, and then this will be the receiving end that goes inside this shaft. So what I need to do now is put a nice sheath, you know, shrink wrapped lining on this, feed my wires through my shaft here itself, and at that point the shaft, at least this end, will be ready to put in the car, and then of course finish the connectors. And I use I'll be using a 12-pin D10 connector, and using a new helm joint shaft on the back side of this as well. So that's where I'm at. I'll go ahead and get the wirings fed through here and bring you back on that. All right. So let me pan down here. I have the shaft installed in the car. You can see here's the steering wheel end. I just slid that on as well. Just wanted to show you what that looks like. Now there's the wire loom that's coming out the back. I have not put the heat shield on that yet, so I'll be doing that in a minute, and then continue with the steering wheel, right? So the rest of the install for the car is pretty straightforward. I just need to put the DTM 12-pin connector on the wire loom that's inside the shaft for the car itself, then turn my attention to the steering wheel, and I'll need to remove the old spa hub here and retrofit this with the new end again here. So if I take this thing off, one hand here, take this thing off, this will be the receiving end that mounts to the steering wheel. So I'll have to bring this over here, and again this will replace that spa hub. So let me pull that apart and start working on that, okay? Well, we have takeoff, liftoff, whatever. No, actually, as I roll down here to the steering wheel, you can see I have the steering wheel in the car. I have the electronics powered on. It is working, which is great, and this is using the new cordless hub on the car. So now we need to get the car out on the track, make sure everything's working right, works here on the bench or in the garage quite well. I tested all the I/O and so on. I don't expect there'll be any issues, but next step will be out on the track, of course, and we'll see what this does, okay? Well, that's it for the Krontec steering wheel hub, cordless, wireless adapter, whatever you want to call it, right? I hope this thing works. You know, as I started or mentioned throughout the video, you know, that spa adapter that I used last year, gosh, the thing just died on me, took me out of a race. Really a bummer. This thing seems to be bulletproof, so look, there's no way to tell until we actually get the car on the track and put it through some cycles. Just remember, when you go through this process yourself, just test all your I/O, kind of common sense stuff, right? But make sure all your buttons, your dash, everything that you have and that you expect to work is working appropriately before you take the car out on track. So that's it for this video, the Krontec steering wheel hub. I'm hopeful this thing's going to be a rock star, and I'll keep you informed with time out on track. If I have any tidbits or things that I need to share with you, I'll make sure I do that. But that's it for today. Thank you for watching this channel. Thank you for subscribing. And if you haven't, come on, consider doing so, would you? I would appreciate that. And several folks have been sharing their ideas, thoughts about different video content you know, please send those my way as well. I'll queue those up and get to them as soon as I can. But that's it for now, and until next time, ciao.